even though I studied law, I was automatically thought there's no way I want to try and interpret this myself. So that's when I started looking at external and third-party consultants that could help us with this. So we decided to go with that approach.
There are some places in the laws where it's intentionally left, like the legislator isn't going to decide, the regulators will, and will issue the guidance, in a year out. So to a certain extent, we're all like, I think everyone in the industry is going to be guessing and making their best guess.
Most of the people at Spectrum have gone through helping companies adopt GDPR as that was deployed. And so there's a lot of similarities between that and some of the ambiguousness of the legislation and what that actually means in terms of application. So how much of this is, as a vendor, stuff that we can do to actually offload the burden from the customers or make it easier? And how much of this is policy and other things where people may need guidance?
To bring a little more transparency to the process of content moderation, to the process of governments requesting content removed. And I think as more of that comes into the public square, it's going to help folks kind of a long-term conversation come to a more realistic perspective, because for a long time, other than the trust and safety profession, for very good reasons, have wanted to keep a lot of things secret and under wraps, or we didn't have like the resources and the time and the money and the buy-in from everyone else in our organization to set up like very transparent processes. So we've kind of, wanted to operate in the background and didn't want to get in everyone's faces and talk about all the terrible things we see. Like that's not the face we want to share the world. But as this is becoming more important for like more societies and more democracies.
If you're giving people the way to actually circumvent those mechanisms that provide that protection, there's potential, issues there too. So it's finding the right level of transparency that I think is going to be really important to actually do this successfully.
The first piece of advice that I would give to people is look to other companies that have put out transparency reports. It's a known thing that no matter what platform you are, if you have people there, unfortunately you have bad actors. In my opinion, companies that aren't saying anything at all, to me, it looks more sinister than companies that are saying, hey, yes, we have these issues, but actually here, look what we're doing about it. Putting it as a good news story. And that's how you kind of sell it to your executives, that you're able to say, because of this and because we were proactively detecting it, we were able to, remove these people from the platform, or we were able to report, X number of people to law enforcement or whatever it may be, so that you're actually showing people that it shouldn't be seen as a negative thing. You're actually making it a positive thing for your platform to show that you're recognizing bad behavior and you're doing something about it.
Something that the DSA tries to implement is very clear and universal guidelines on notice and reporting content from people, and giving them notice when there are reports against them or actions taken against them. So it's a process transparency. And I think that's a place where the industry, it's very uneven. Sometimes process transparency serves your needs and you do it. Sometimes you don't have the time for it. But I think we're all going to have to be more transparent on process. And I hope that in the industry that leads to like collaboration and like standards coalescing and coming together.
The transparency reports of old, the ones that I've seen from companies kind of prior to DSA, were more a marketing vehicle than anything else. It was, hey, look, we're doing something. And so I think to me, this is actually the evolution of a transparency report as a, hey, we're showing that we're doing something, and we're going to just select the appropriate information that enables us to show that without highlighting any of the bad stuff, and moving to something where it is actually valuable.
I was looking at, because obviously I said we were the first gaming company to do it, so I couldn't look to any other gaming companies and just copy what they had done, unfortunately. So I would look at TikTok and I would look at, okay, well, how closely does their external code of conduct align to ours? And it was quite close. We all have the same things covering, hate speech, sexual content and whatnot. So then I was looking at, well, what data were the likes of, I'll use TikTok as an example because they were one that I took a lot of inspiration from. And I was looking at, well, how were they presenting the data? And then what kind of data do we have internally that could mirror that? So it was really just looking at, okay, well, how many accounts were we proactively detecting for this? Of these things that we proactively detected, okay, how many of them did we actually go ahead and action? And that's kind of how I told the story.
You look at the things that the DSA actually outlines in terms of working with algorithmic partners. A lot of it essentially the goal is to understand or to make it clear to the end user why something happens to them, why they were punished, why this thing happened. And with AI, particularly if there's not human in the loop, there can be a question of like, all right, determination was made. What were the things that happened to cause that determination to happen? And particularly as AI gets more sophisticated, if it's not looking at a single message, if it's looking at a series of messages, if it's looking at messages plus reputation plus all these other things, the more features that come into a determination, the more difficult it can be to point to this is the particular piece of criteria that caused something to be flagged. So in determining that, hey, this message was redacted because it violated this policy, you could respond, hey, our artificial intelligence, we algorithmically determined that you violated this policy with this message.
This is an area where a decent amount is left to regulation and interpretation, I think. So it's an area where we don't have firm answers yet. The oversight board is not like built and constructed currently as an individual redress mechanism. The board is established to be independent, like actually independent, and that is also something that a redress system will have to be, and that is probably something that I didn't anticipate, like how complicated and difficult that is to like have enough information so that the outside independent they can make a good recommendation and be truly independent and not reliant on the platform, and the decisions and outcomes are truly independent. And yet have them, come back to the platforms and be actionable and useful. And like how you do that for everyone who might want to appeal, it's going to be a really difficult problem. I think, we're going to end up with, platforms having to have, hire a contractor outside of the organization to do this for them. The more you can do now to make sure like your structure of your appeal system is sound and you don't have technical debt there and you're like confident in it, that's kind of the first step. But I think companies can start thinking about taking. And the appeal system is, that exists so far is clear to people, so that when you add this other thing, it will be clear and you'll have the technical resources and, the API or whatever you establish will work smoothly. And you could start thinking about some of that now.
The majority of your appeals, a very, very small percentage of them will be overturned, but then the massive amount of appeals that you get. And I mean, anything that gives users more rights is a good thing. But practically, this will definitely have a lot of implications, particularly on smaller trust and safety teams. So, if you have people that know that they have the right to appeal, everyone's going to know they have the right to appeal these bans. But there can definitely be this trolling element that will start to come in, and people who know they've absolutely done something wrong and they have been very clearly a bad actor will appeal anyway. And all of these appeals are going to have to be looked at by a human. So it's definitely going to put a huge strain on resources.